Season 3 is almost here and it seems that everyone has an idea of what you should be starting with. But luckily for you, I'm not here to talk about any of that. Instead, here are the 5 builds that you should absolutely not choose as your first character into the realms of a new season. Keep in mind that this is my personal opinion based off my personal experience, so it may differ from what our content creators suggest.
Bone Necro is a great choice.
One of the most powerful builds in the entire game.
Absolute savage of a monster and player killer.
This build
Everyone has an idea of what you should be starting with.
A Fury Droid that is wearing IK set.
So the first on my list of builds that you don't want to start with is the Barbarian. Unless of course you can crack the game's code and somehow guarantee yourself a low rune drop early on, I would absolutely advise against starting Season 3 as a Barb. You see all those powerful find item builds that excel at solo farming Travincal, Pindleskin or the Pit, but until you get your Grief, which requires you to have that low rune I've mentioned to make it, you will only have a fraction of a build's efficiency at Travincal and it can become frustrating. And as for the Pit, you also need Enigma to be efficient. So when you can actually afford your Grief and Enigma, it becomes pound for pound the best solo farming character in the entire game, but until then you won't enjoy playing it quite as much.
No! God, please, no! No!
With that said, the Barb as a starting character is a no for me. Next on my list is the physical Bawazon.
Oops.
Although I might just go for it myself to spice things up, that is not something that I would recommend to start with if you want to be efficient about it. You see, even though we got some new toys to play with in the form of Hustle Runeward and some bug fixes like the attack rating on Strafe, it still doesn't change the fact that you need a lot of expensive gear pieces to make the build work. So unless you're fine with the struggles of getting all of that expensive gear and wanna sort of challenge yourself, I would stay away from starting as a physical Bawazon. Instead, you can choose a much cheaper and effective alternative and go cold with a Freezing Arrow Bawazon. With it you can start farming the Stony Tomb with just your playthrough gear on day 1. So the third build that made it on my list is the Bone Necromancer.
You have a date with death.
The nature of its damage being magic and there being only a handful of magic immune creatures in the game makes him a great playthrough character. But that's about it. He is terrible at boss farming and below average at slaying champion packs.
Treasure finding? Yes.
One thing he really excels at is PvP.
That's the f***ing spirit.
But for that you also need a lot of gear and there are many builds that will get you that gear much faster. Additionally, I hope that the new Metamorphosis Runeward won't make you start a Druid as your first character.
So it begins.
I would advise against starting with any melee character if you want to be as efficient as possible. In fact, starting with any Druid is also a no for me. Let's face a little bit of facts here.
Help me.
If you just want to set things on fire, there are more safer and mobile options to do so. Options like the Fireball Hydra Sorceress, which also has teleport, or a Wake of Fire Assassin, which remember now has its -res from gear also working for her traps. Now let's cool off a bit with a Frost Nova Sorceress. Since that is my 5th build that I don't recommend you start your Season 3 journey with.
Forgive me.
This was perhaps my mostly played character in Season 2, but what I was mainly doing with it is farming the Stony Tomb with all them squishy mobs on Players 1. And even on Players 1, difficulty to be effective at farming something like Cows or Gear Sanctuary, you had to sacrifice quite some magic find percentages in favor of clear speed. Now with a nerf to Cold Mastery that comes with 2.6, while they obviously aim to reduce the amount of Bleed Sorceresses, it also basically kills the Frost Nova. Anyway, that were my 5 characters that I don't recommend you start the new season with. Like the video if you will, subscribe to the channel, and I will be seeing you in Season 3.